Well, hello, good afternoon, good evening, goeienaand, sayabona, whatever, shkal. And welcome to Pepper's Echo, the NA discussion. Yes, it is me flying solo again today, as my counterpart is not very well at all and is unfortunately not going to make it on today. But hopefully I can toe the line for a while. I'm trying to feel a little Christmassy, as you will notice over here. I've thrown a few little sticks. We'll take it out if it gets in the way. But how's everybody tonight, or this afternoon, or this evening? Always good to be on the Echo again and see what we can say. I think some destinations have got a problem. I think the problem would be with Facebook. You might, if you are trying to post messages live on Facebook, they might not come through to me. I do apologize. Restream seems to be experiencing a little trouble with them as such. However, welcome to the Echo, where we look at things from the outside looking inside. The ordinary man, I don't want to say not educated, that makes an actual doof of me, but no research, no high knowledge of anything or anything to that effect as such. And I'm looking at it at South African politics specifically, but not only, and would be happy to address and take a look at any other subjects that you have an idea from. But what we do is, when we look at something, we are creating the questions from the ordinary man in the street that is putting the questions to the inside. As I said before, in all my different other streams as well, if you're looking at getting maybe harder facts, a little bit of a under the nail issues with a lot more research and just say hard-hitting knocks on it, then I would suggest you take a look at a Ronaldo Coase, Chris Wyatt, Joe Emilio, Ramon Cabernac with Morning Shot, and Germ from Germ Warfare. He's still around. I've had a pretty busy week working up to my holidays, so I have not been on par as such. But yes, and then please, we remember, don't forget, please like and subscribe. It would be most gratifying. I keep on forgetting it. But yeah, if you could like and subscribe, it'd be really great. It's the only way that I get my video out and to get people to know that Pepper's Echo is on. And then also, it's the only way that I can get interaction from you. So if you're watching live, great, welcome. If you're watching the rerun, thank you very much as well for doing that. And if you have any ideas, suggestions, topics, or would like to come onto the show yourself, please do us a big one and email us at peppersecho@gmail.com, PEPRSECHO. Yes, it is missing a P and an E. That is correct. And currently you're watching the NA discussion. But yes, once again, lastly, please like and subscribe. Would be really appreciated from you. So, my name's Andre, and hopefully I can keep up with you for the next 40-45 minutes or so, depending on how long we go. I'm not really worried about time. It's as much as what it takes us to go around the block. There we go, name out. But anyway, today we want to take a look at a few things. Something I've been wanting to talk about before, maybe touching on a little bit of a sensitive subject, and it could also be a little controversial at times. I question it, and I'm creating the questions for it, so please don't sue me or hang me up from the nearest tree or something to that effect. But it would be mostly appreciated if you would give your ideas. Yes. Hello, Linda. It is so right next, so nice to hear you. Sitting next to a dam in the warm sunshine. Oh, that is so fantastic. I am green with envy. But yes, so lovely to have you around always. But yeah, I hope you're enjoying it. I hope you've got a nice drink there with you, nice cool one by the dam. As long as you're not at the beach, huh? Because you're not allowed to be on the beach. Be at the dam, not at the beach. Yeah. But yeah, as I said, a subject that I want to take a look at this week is apartheid. And everyone, whoa, hang on a bit. Yeah, apartheid. Apartheid I'd like to take a look at because it is being blamed for everything and anything all the way through. And some people say, whoa, it's justified. Others are going, no, 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 it's not justified. And then others are going, well, it wasn't so bad back then. And I'm thinking, ooh, hang on a sec. It was so bad back then. Why are people longing for pre-94 days? And what was bad about it? Okay, bad about it was inhumane. Okay, you don't treat people like that. What was good about it, there was structure and there was a steady economy. So then that puts me back to a few episodes amongst the first ones that Nelius and I started on when we said, well, is it class, color, or culture that makes us that different? And are we prepared to put apartheid as the culprit for class, color, or culture? We said, well, look, you know what? It's not really class and it's not really culture. And we didn't want to say color either. And we figured that, you know what, it is actually more I don't want to say intellectual because it's not the, it's not how well you are educated, but it is how you look at something. Now, I do believe that people do long for a pre-94, and some of them for the wrong reasons. I do believe that people resent pre-94, and some of them also for the wrong reasons. Okay, I also do believe that apartheid was wrong, and sadly, many of us, and I grew up in that era, I was in my young teens and that in the 80s, and I do believe many of us were sheltered from the raw face of apartheid as such. We didn't know any better. I know that there were a lot of people fighting against it and fighting for the rights for all people. But there came a little bit more to it. And I actually want to share different discussions on a program or a site called Quora. It's almost like a Twitter site that does seem to have pretty interesting things. Some of them are about a year or two old, but it actually does drive home what I'm actually wanting to talk about. How's it, Divan? Yes, from Divan. Very nice, welcome. Okay, and so yeah, I'm going to stir up these things with like little pebbles in the water saying, you know what, pre-94, was it that bad? Wasn't it that bad? Yes, it was that bad. But there were certain things that we could do with now that worked and had nothing to do with oppression of people. It was just a working structure. Should it be working now? Yes. Should it have been given the opportunity to get working? Yes, I agree. You can't just fall in and take over. Hence BEE. But is BEE not doing what apartheid did? Because how long do you want to continue with it? The question there being, and I know the statement made, and I don't know if it was the president, but it was somebody in government who said, you know what, and I'm sure it was the president that said, the problem is we have the majority, we have the monopoly of people, we have the government, we are in full rule, but we don't have the economic power. We don't have all the money. So basically, the government, the ANC, does not want to rest until they have the majority people in South Africa, the majority rule in South Africa, the full governing of South Africa, as well as everybody's money in South Africa. They cannot see fit to have, and their specific voices, look, you know what, white people have most of the money. I'm not against that statement that they're saying so, yes. But how have we gone about generating, or have we gone about taking and wanting it given? And that's the next question. And I know that there's a lot of white people who are pretty arrogant in that state as well. I have sadly met them and have had to deal with them, and they are arrogant. Doesn't matter what color you are, they have a certain entitlement to themselves. So on both sides of the fence, you're also going to find black people people of other colors who are arrogant and feel that they have a certain entitlement to themselves. But when it comes to a government, I think you should rule to the benefit of, or govern to the benefit of your people. And I don't think that has been done. And I think that is why many people, and sadly black and white, sometimes refer to, I don't want to say long back for, but would like to see pre-apartheid times or post 94, pre 94, sorry, not post 94, pre 94. Not because of the way that people were treated. I think it was inhumane. I think the fact that people needed to use another tap, use another door, use another building because of their color was absolutely, may I say, disgusting. But I do find that streets were clean, pools were clean, buildings were decent, UIF was paid. What else? You know what? Economy was strong. What are we looking at now? We're looking at a diving economy. Our country looks like a dump. The most beautiful country under the sun looks like an absolute dump. And you know what? Is that culture? Is that culture? Is it my culture that I can just throw everything around? Is that how I was brought up? So accept it? Or is it important that we actually maintain that kind of structure? And if we do, then why have we not implemented that as such yet? Why are we allowed to burn and break? And then the minister or chief of police turns a blind eye until he suddenly comes under threat. Let's take a look here. Is life in South Africa better today than it was under apartheid? And about that, let's take a look at a couple of answers over there. And Mike Reddy says, yes, most certainly. We are protected by a constitution that is reputed to be the best in the world. We have a president who is genuine in his efforts to bring about peace and prosperity to this country. As South Africans, we have a great faith in our courts, very especially the Constitutional Court and our Chief Justice. During the days of apartheid, I felt like a foreigner and was treated like a foreigner in the land of my birth. But today I'm proud to be South African. There are still small pockets of racists on both sides of the divide. Those whites, Indians, and coloreds who would like to return to apartheid. Whites, Indians, and coloreds who would like to return to apartheid. And then there are those blacks who would like to get rid of all Indians and whites and have a black-only South Africa. They are considered to, I lost track there. They are considered the lunatic fringe and are ignored by the great majority of South African black, coloreds, Indians, and whites who yearn for a peaceful and prosperous South Africa, which belongs to all that are born in it. So, yes, I do agree. You know what? We shouldn't be trying to match up on what we would like to return to, and we should match to what we are wanting to achieve. The goal should not be, I would like to go backwards to get that. The goal should be, we need to go forward to get that. I agree with that. I disagree that we have a constitution that is reputed to be the best in the world. It's a freaking joke. But no, our constitution is not. It is the most corrupt that I've seen. A president who is genuine in his efforts to bring about peace and prosperity in this country. If he'd get a backbone, I think he might be able to do something. But yeah, South Africans have a great faith in our courts. No, they don't. And our courts are dropping the ball. They are letting us down. They are not keeping up the law. Our courts are probably of the worst that we could come. And this is why, once again, I wanted to speak about the death sentence. And think about this before we actually get to chatting about it one day. Those people who want the death sentence back in South Africa and say, well, you know what, things will be better if the death sentence comes back to South Africa. You think to yourself, with the incapable stupidity with which our country is governed and the idiocy with which our courts are ruled, how safe would it be to have a death penalty put back into South Africa? How safe, how sane would it be to have them applying the death penalty. How many innocent people are going to be killed, murdered, under the legal law, banner of legality law, because the death penalty is coming back? How many people are going to get away, escape, that should, and how many people are not? Because to have the death penalty, you need to be able to govern responsibly. Our country cannot even govern. Our current party, the ANC, can't even govern, never mind responsibly. They don't know what the word responsible means. The gent says, during the days of apartheid, I felt like I was a foreigner and I was treated like a foreigner in the land of my birth, but today I'm proud to be South African. I'm sure that he does feel that way, and I'm very, very pleased that he feels that way. Sadly, I feel like a foreigner in my own country now, and I'm treated like one as well. So, what happened? Are those, and then there are those blacks who would like to get rid of all Indians and whites. Oh, sorry, there are still small pockets of racists on both sides of the divide. Yes, I agree, on both sides of the divide. That is acceptable. We have racists in white and we have racists in black. We have racists in colored and we have racists in Indian people as well. And whoever else is left along the line. So it's not just blacks and whites, but we have pockets of racists in all different cultures and races. But he says there are those who would like to return to apartheid. So, there are small pockets of races, those whites, Indians, and coloreds who would like to return to apartheid. Now, that's a problem to me. Why would they like to return to apartheid? And that's something that I'm asking again. Why do you want to go back to apartheid? Is it because you'd like to sit on a bench that the other colored person isn't allowed to sit on? Or is it because, you know what, you could walk down a street safely, you could see a clean road, the utilities were taken care of properly, schools were built, although they were burnt down as fast as they were built up as well. Maybe in a new country, if it ran like that as well, they would be more equal. I don't want to say that it wasn't equal, but not having the fact, I don't think the fact of wanting to go back is to go back to the oppression of human beings, but just to go back to the fact of governing a country like it should be governed, and not have our government stealing, plundering, looting money, items, land, turning blind eyes to people that are thug terrorists, red beret wearing little Nazis. And then there are those blacks who would like to get rid of all Indians and whites and have a black-only South Africa. Yes, unfortunately, those are part of the racists and such. However, the problem once again lies with our government, because the government is egging them on to do so. So why do the people want to go back to pre-94? Not for the oppression, but for the fact that it was actually ruled with a pretty much, I would say, a firm hand, but much was done. Much was done for few. Let me put it that way. Let me not forget to say that. Much was done for few, little was done for many. But then if that worked, why are we not applying much to many now? Why are we still crying that it's not given to us? That is my question. They considered the lunatic fringe, and I ignored by the great majority of South Africa, South African, blacks, coloureds, Indians and whites, who yearn for a peaceful and prosperous South Africa, which belongs to all that are born in it. I like his statement in that end, yes. And that brings me to the question, should we even be comparing this to the past? Should we even be looking back and saying, hey, you know what, the economy was great pre-94, we should get to that. The streets were clean, the streets were safe, hospitals were there, roads were fixed, there wasn't corruption. I'm sure there was corruption, but it wasn't as affluent as what it is now. You know what, people could live. Why is that not applied today? That is basically what people are looking at. Instead of saying, what was there? This is what we've got to strive to. We've got to strive to that economy. We've got to strive to that equality. We've got to strive to that togetherness. You're now sitting with people pining for the past. What I've said in the pep talk is I've said that, you know what, Dave Evans said to me, once you've made a decision Don't be afraid to make it, because you don't regret. Don't have regrets once you've made a decision. Don't don't be afraid to make a decision because you may have regrets. Make the decision. If you find it was wrong, make a better one. And I think what we are doing at the moment is running on a lot of regrets, sadly enough. You know what? Do you regret? I mean, one of the biggest things, do you regret voting in the 92 referendum? And I don't think the 92 referendum was incorrectly voted for. I think the country has been incorrectly governed, as we spoke about last week. Everything was going fine up to about 2007. Nelson Mandela made it great. Thabo Mbeki worked well. Forgotten the finance guy. But anyway, they were all doing well. Then in came Zuma and Gordon and opened up plundering to the rest. And that's where we fell. We were actually stronger in 2015 than what we were in 1994. Economy and GDP. It's just that the money was now being funneled in the wrong direction. Retief de Villiers says, on a balance, definitely. At the moment, we have a crime problem, major corruption in government that new president seems to be doing his best to address. I disagree. Education standards have gone backwards, and there is a huge unemployment problem. Some people would say that this means that we are worse off. But before the current dispensation, there was a large-scale unrest in the country. Sanctions against was tightening on all fronts, and more than 80% of the population of the country had no political rights. This situation was unsustainable and morally wrong. Sadly, I need to agree there. And maybe it was easier to govern over 20% of the country and abolish 80% of the country. However, it still does not excuse fighting for a right and then not delivering 26 years later. So yes, life is better in South Africa today, although there are challenges mentioned above, but having challenges is not unique to our country. I agree, but I mean, how resilient do you want a country to be consistently when the people that you were supposed to uplift have not been uplifted? The people who actually did have affluency are losing everything. I mean, I think the narrative that is being put across is, look, you know what, if we get all white people out and down, then we can fill all of that with black people and everything will be fine. Well, look, you know what, I don't want to be funny, but even if you were saying 20%, which is far above, I think it's about 10% above what the white people are in the country, even if you got 20% of white people out and you filled it with 20% black people, what are you going to do with the rest of the 60% of your country? Sorry, the train's full, the gravy train will now leave, you are all staying behind. No, you need to work together for a country together. And sadly, our murder rate is that of war at the moment. What's 60 a day or something to that effect? Ridiculous. Ask Ronaldo Khos, he's got the facts. Yes, absolutely. Here's one. Prem Singh, yes, absolutely, it is better. So people in South Africa have celebrated 6 elections since 1994. And 2 presidents have been thrown out. Have your freedom of speech and economy has opened up to blacks? Freedom of speech has been biased. Economy has opened up to blacks. Who were denied their voting rights under apartheid days? Correct. So they can vote. The problem I have is, why the hell do you let a prisoner vote? He has no rights. The minute he actually commits a crime, he gives up his rights. So why do we allow them to vote? You have no right, Mr. Prisoner. You are a good-for-nothing thug. Stay in jail. And if it's for embezzlement or whatever, stay in jail. I don't care what color you are. When you come out, you can redeem your right again when you have served your time. But while you are in prison, you have no right. Thabo Mbeki's vision of an African Renaissance is working. This is answered in 2019, July 2019. Thabo Mbeki had already been kicked out. His vision for an African Renaissance would have been good if they'd let him carry it out. But the dumb idiots decided to throw him out because he was governing a little tighter than what they wanted, and they wanted the money. However, on the dark side, the government is the most corrupt and is destroying South Africa. Exactly. Exactly. So how can you? Anonymous, I think it depends on your race. I personally would like way it was in apartheid, because today we don't have peace because blacks are robbing and mugging innocent people as well as heists too. I'm not criticizing blacks, I'm saying so because we the bad ones are blacks. Back then was a peaceful place with people you are comfortable around with. What I pray for is peaceful nation regardless of race, but that won't work. That's just my opinion. Now this is the site that I'm taking a look at, that people are looking at, and they're going, well, back in that time, 20% of the people had a peaceful time. Back in that time, 20% of the people were safe. Back in that time, 20% of the people had clean streets, good streets, roads, houses, etc., etc. Back in that time, it was comfortable. Yes, people would argue, oh, but we built school for black people. Yes, you did. And their hospital, their medical treatment was just as good. Although you couldn't go in the same side as a white person, you had just as good medical treatment on the black side as well. However, most of the black people were not considered and were left. You know what? Here's a big trough. We'll put you all in that, and that's where you'll stay, and we'll let you out every now and again. That's inhumane. What we still need to do is move ahead, but we need to move ahead with the right government. And people, while the ANC is in government, you will not move a stitch forward. You will fall lower than the sand under your shoes. All that I can say. Apartheid, Dennis Levy, apartheid is still enforced in South Africa. People are still classified by the government according to race. 100%. The government is consistently playing race against each other. That's the next point that is a problem. In apartheid days, races played against each other. Guess what? 26 years after 1994, the government is still playing race against each other. Police still kill lots of people. No, I don't know. A lot of police are being killed. Racism is probably more pervasive in everyday life than it ever was. I don't know. Racism was strongly white-based in apartheid. Now I find that it is, I don't want to say more predominantly black, because there are less whites than black and more blacks than whites. So therefore racism is more from a black side, especially when you're looking at acknowledged and accepted political parties such as the EFF, and the government condones it. Because don't tell me, if you don't say no, that means you're saying yes. If you don't do anything about it, you are agreeing with it. If you don't hold anyone accountable, that means you are allowing it. And our government does that every step of the way. And then they get to say that all the money is still in the white people's hands. Never mind whose hands it is, I want that money. That's a problem to me. Elections, racism is probably more every day than it was before. Yes, race is a trump card at the moment. Elections are almost meaningless because people vote according to tribal race. So the Nguni, who are the majority, always win, and there is no way of fixing this problem. One rubbish government was replaced by another rubbish government. Only privileged few benefit, such as the Gupta family. Sadly, that is true. If the current government could govern for all, like the past government that governed for the few, I think there would be far more upliftment. But at the moment, the current government are governing for their own back pockets. They are happy to cause destruction. They're happy to cause unhappiness, tension. They're happy to cause racist feelings. They're happy to cause unrest between the people in their country. Because while the people are busy being distracted by arguing, fighting, and bickering between each other, the government is able to go on with all their little underhanded plans undeterred. Steve Hayes says, yes, there are still plenty of problems, including some left over from the apartheid, that the government has failed to fix. For example, the police, education, health services. But we have a free press and judges who can prevent the kind of abuse that occurred under apartheid. But judges are not doing that. Police, I really feel sorry for the police, because there are some good men in those police departments. There are really some good police, but I think they are under more pressure now than what they were pre-apartheid, pre-94, in the apartheid era, because you had, and yeah, sure, it was in a terribly racist, divided, and inhumane, and I will not condone going to apartheid or anything like that, but you had a police force that was proud. You had a police force that was respected by all. You had a military that was respected by all. You had a military that was proud. We have an absolute shambles of a military. We have a police force which is carried by a few good men, and the rest are an absolute atrocity. The medical side, where we used to be able to provide top-class medical services, we just can't. I mean, what was it in KwaZulu-Natal? There was that one town by the seaside, was a city. The hospital had baboons in them, man. Where the guys, the people's curtains were, there were baboons walking around there. I mean, please, really, it's ridiculous. I personally know of a friend whose daughter has had to have an emergency operation, which has neatly been put off for over a year, although this could have been for life, between life and death. Really, so there's a problem. Now, I don't want to say reminisce back, but what I'm saying is go forward. So yeah, it's not better off. I would say life is not better. There is more unemployment, more poverty, more racism, more hatred, less infrastructure, less good healthcare, less respect for one another's freedom. Basically, a change that has worsened. Yes, I could say I don't think life is better at the moment, but it depends on who you're talking for and who you're talking to. For the ANC government, life is better. For the ANC everyday person, life is not better. Unemployment is definitely higher than it's ever been, even when we had apartheid. However, unemployment was measured by white employment and not by the country's employment in apartheid. So actually knowing unemployment and if it has actually moved would be a contentious point to debate. More poverty, more racism, more hatred. Definitely more poverty, because the country is being pushed into poverty to be able to rule over as such. More hatred and more racism, definitely, because you have a government that is egging it on and condoning every step of the way. Less infrastructure, yes, because we're not looking at building that infrastructure. Good healthcare, less respect for one another's freedom, of course. Instead of respecting each other, people have decided that it's we rather blame each other. The very few that are wanting to get ahead are not enough for those who are trying to pass the blame, because we want it. It's easy. Nothing in life is easy. I've actually spent time with my kids this week at school, and we're saying, you know what? The world meets nobody halfway. Life ain't easy. But if you work at it, you get satisfaction from achieving. But no one's prepared to do that. We want instant satisfaction. These days, everything is instant. Only for the ruling individuals. For the rest, it's worse. Yes, agreed. Yes. But this sentiment is not shared by all that benefited under the apartheid government for obvious reasons. No. Let's take a look at what are both sides of the story with regards to South Africa's apartheid from 1948 to the 1990s. There are always two passionate sides to every story, and in many cases, this is also a third impartial account. There is also a third impartial account. Simple example of this is how often does one party admit guilt and full responsibility in a simple road accident? Either the person in front braked suddenly without warning, the other car reversed into or turned into me. I was blinded by the other car's lights. The traffic light was faulty, etc. I was innocent, and the other party was guilty. To simply confine South Africa's entire history, to a very tight time frame of 42 years can be very misleading. The history of the world is filled with defining eras of cause and effect, and if one was to simply frame a convenient period, the whole issue can be distorted. A good example of this, let's take a look, and I really like this part. Without looking at how World War II started, without knowing the circumstances that brought the US into the war and the great cost of the US lives in defeating Germany and potentially in finally defeating Japan in conventional warfare, then the US dropping 2 atomic bombs on Japan causing many civilian deaths can be seen one-sidedly as a blatant crime against humanity. Here is a simplistic explanation. South Africa's recorded history began in 1652 when the Dutch wanted to establish a refreshment station at the tip of South Africa to replenish their trading ships on the long voyage to and from East Indies and Netherlands. That was the VOC, Victorian or whatever, but I know that was the Cape where they put that there. That's history, which I don't know if they're allowed to do that anymore. With a gradual white colonization which lasted approximately 350 years, this period in South African history was filled with the historic racial disputes. In the South African context, there have been more than 3 centuries of almost continual war. There have been conflict and skirmishes between races, cultures, and tribes, and even wars between same races. Mfakani and Anglo-Boer wars, as example. There have been world wars and worldwide division of nations that have a direct effect on our history. And now, post-1994, the rewriting of South African history has begun, and in most cases, sans factual and documented evidence. In this 360-year period of white presence in South Africa, whites traded with different black tribes. Whites negotiated and bought land from different tribes. Whites also settled on unoccupied land and established farms and industry. And for various reasons, both justifiably and unjustifiably, whites also fought against different black tribes, occupied land, and later dominated black people. It's the order of law and how it worked previously. I mean, no land has always been given. Sometimes it was taken, sometimes it has been conquered, in all kinds of different names and religions. So, yeah, it should be noted that whites never came to Southern Africa, the Cape, in 1652, with the intention of colonizing, invasion, subduing, and occupying any black tribe and their land, without pointing any fingers. Circumstances resulting from violation of agreements, theft, aggression, and conflict between races and cultures changed things. The world in the 17th century was vastly different from our current 21st century laws, values, customs, and methods, and this applies to whites as well as blacks. So, yeah, we're going quite far back. I don't know how long this goes on. I can still go a bit. About 180 years after 1652, white Afrikaners, burghers, oppressed by occupying British during Napoleonic Wars in the Cape Colony, decided to seek their own land and independence from the British rule in what was known as the Great Track. They tracked into the huge expanse of the interior of Southern Africa and what was seen as unoccupied land. They did not want to integrate with the British or the cultures and races which at that time was seen as primitive, barbaric, and warlike. They therefore avoided territory where these black people were seen or appeared to occupy. Whites, Afrikaners, wanted self-determination and to protect their own culture and religion, both from British as well as primitive black tribes. As white civilization, settlements, farms, industry, towns, and infrastructure grew over the centuries, so too black people were attracted and in search of modern world benefits. Whites had brought their primitive world. Whites were happy to utilize the labor black people provided. So basically, you want to do work, I'm happy to utilize the work to trade with you. Whites did not want black people, the laborers, to live in established white areas, For centuries, whites left black people to their own will and device. But as more and more black people congregated around white development, whites, especially from 1948 onward, National Party winning elections, encouraged and funded black people to govern and develop independently in their own tribal areas and lands. Unfortunately, black people were inherently unable to develop independently in the same modern world manner as whites had done, and found it easier to work for whites. Housing and supporting an increasing population of black workers for mines and industry became a problem for a minority population of whites. Black labor townships were built and established, and for the purpose of housing black mine and industry labor. Soweto is a good example. So, housing black mine and industry labor. Soweto is a huge city, suburb of Johannesburg on its own, affluent as well. These townships soon became occupied by millions of non-laborers as black people from all over the country sought basic employment from booming white industrial towns and cities. To avoid squatter camps, now known as informal settlements forming around the white townships, black people were compelled to reside in their own designated townships. This was regulated in specific areas and provinces by what was known as a work pass system. Only employed black people and direct family were issued such documents. Black people classed as second-class citizens were not allowed to enter white facilities, buses, trains, or shops, and had their own entrances, seating, etc. Black were not allowed to participate in political voting within the Republic of South Africa. They could, however, do as they pleased in their own tribal or homelands and their own governments. Various segregation laws were passed to enforce this situation. An example of this, up until the early 70s, black people workers were compelled to abide by a night curfew, 10 p.m. system, and set time to return to their own townships and out of white areas. These are things from apartheid, guys, so they weren't all moonshine and roses. These are what black people had to abide under. So, even if you weren't able to govern or rule or develop, it was also probably not fair to tread on the person. I think there may have been a better way. But anyway, black people violating this curfew could be arrested and detained overnight. And so the problem of formalized segregation began and was enforced and was referred to as apartheid, Afrikaans word for apartness or segregation. Whites provided all housing, infrastructure, hospitals, schools, and facilities within townships. But as the informal population grew, so these facilities were stretched to the limit. Education was always a problem, as it is now, and out of cultural necessity, different curricula were applied to blacks and whites. This is why I say, even though we did build schools in the past, I think to keep building schools in the future is good, but to keep the education level high. Currently, we are dropping our education level consistently to try, to give somebody an advantage. You can't drop the education level to give somebody an advantage. That is automatically giving that person a disadvantage. But I think the government does not care as such, because their ideal is to rule over a mess, the ashes. The country can tear itself apart and have zero economy. But their success, once again, as I say, would be to stay in power and rule over the ashes of a war-torn country more than what it is to build up a strong economic country. Okay, so yeah, it was different. Education was, curricula was applied to blacks and whites. Post-1994 education is manipulated in a different way to accommodate black people by drastically lowering pass marks for exams, as well as redesigning subjects to make passing matric grade 12 easier. Note, pre-1994 black people received a higher level of education by more skillful and qualified teachers than what they do today, people. In 1975, a new standardized curriculum was applied, and black learners were then required to learn Afrikaans as well as English, same as whites. And also language of instruction changed from mother tongue to either English or Afrikaans. This alignment of the black and white curriculum caused great dissension amongst black learners and resulted in protest action. This protest action was hijacked by the banned ANC, Winnie Mandela as one example, as rallying call against apartheid, and so the 1976 Soweto riots began and spread across southern Africa in what is known as the struggle. I don't want to go reading on too further because I'm going to put you to sleep if I have to say anything ethically now, but you know what? The whole vein is running. Here's one answer on that. I think you asked an interesting question, but I think the wording of your question implies that you are looking at an upside to an apartheid from a white person's perspective and not to be honest. And to be honest, I don't think that's the right question. And yes, as has been expressed in other answers, apartheid was brutally hellish life for all people of color. But I disagree with others who say that there cannot be other sides to the story. All stories have two sides, and no matter how horrific their actions and brutality in which they are carried out, there is a story to be told from the oppressor's side. While everyone knows that the government's objectives were with the introduction of apartheid, I also would be interested in trying to understand what it was like for white people to live under the government-sanctioned hell, and also to try and get into minds of other people who carried out the government's demands. There are many books written, for example, by Germans about the lives during the period 1932 to 1945 and the rise of Hitler. And there are many books written from perspective of the people that carried out the horrific acts that occurred during his reign. If your question is because you are wanting to understand how people can act in such an horrific manner to other human beings, I think it is a valid question, and I would like to read the book. Having said that, any book about the TRC, Truth and Reconciliation Commission, would be a starting point. If you're looking for an upside view of apartheid from a white perspective, as far as I know, there is no book, and I don't think there ever will be. Michael Finn says there is no balanced view for colonialism, oppression, and land-grabbing torture, just like there is none for rape. Apartheid South Africa was one of the most brutal systems in the world. There were mass graves, protected pedophile rings, state-sanctioned torture chambers, genocide, widespread land grabbing, and daily oppression and exploitation of black people. There are no good things about apartheid. Apartheid as such, yes. I just am concerned about the fact of why is the ANC then redoing it? Why is the ANC putting apartheid back into action? I don't think I'm going to continue any further to other points because I've got a few other points which we can carry on a few other days as well. But you know what? If there was nothing good about apartheid, which I agree that there was nothing good about apartheid, by the way, why are we turning it around then today? Why is the ANC continuing not to uplift, not to govern fairly, not to govern properly? I don't think people long for apartheid. I'll be honest with you, I don't think they long for apartheid. The black people, the colored people, the Indian people, and white people, majority of those that genuinely, decently, I'm not talking about the arrogant racists and things like that, I'm talking about genuinely the people. And there are black people who have said, I preferred the time of apartheid, and there are colored people and Indian people who say, I preferred the time of apartheid. And I don't think they mean apartheid, because apartheid in its own, I agree, was brutal. I agree that it was unfair. It was oppressing. It was not right. I mean, I myself would be the first to say I grew up pretty well sheltered during the apartheid era. But I would also say that those people are longing back for a time when there was justice, when there was clean water, clean roads, good hospitals, policing, a military to be contended with. Yes, maybe not your black person who was in the location, what they called. But to a certain extent, those that were not oppressed or I should say mistreated, were also looked after to a certain extent. And I think this is the handout system that comes across these days. Dare I say that? The handout system where I want, you give. You know what? I want money, you give money. I want land, you give land. I want free education, you give education. I want this for free, you get for free. And all of a sudden, government goes, nah. Or else they say, oh, we must give it for free. And then everyone's going, where are we getting the money from for this? So I don't know. You decide. You know what? Apartheid then and now. What now? Then it was an atrocity. It was inhumane. It was a crime against humanity. Agreed. But if we could run structures that were run for the few and run them for the many and build the country now forward again. Nelson Mandela had the right idea. Thabo Mbeki had the right idea. The rest of the cronies dragged this country to its knees and is pulling it even further down. So I do not believe that the question should be, or do not necessarily the question, but I don't believe that we should be longing for apartheid or pre-94. I think we should be longing for good systems, clean streets, clean roads, a good police force, a good military for our future, which the government needs to step up and provide. And you can't say, well, government can only do that much. A government can do everything. A government can do everything. So longing for the past is not going to work. But longing for a prosperity for all that was for the few in the past, that can be. And can being a part of the difference can also be. We are so busy throwing things around that I think we sometimes forget to be that piece of a change. I'd like to finish off today with the story of a little girl that was walking along a beach, and it had one of those heavy high tides, the red tides, where they'd washed out, everything had washed out onto the beach, and thousands and thousands of starfish had washed out onto this beach. And this little girl picked up one starfish at a time, started throwing one back, throwing the other one back. And there was this old chap sitting on the bench on the beach there, and he looked at her and he says, little girl, you can stop doing that. It's not going to make a difference. She picked up another one and she threw it back into the sea, and she looked at him and she said, made a difference to that one, didn't it? And that's why you might not be able to put thousands and thousands of starfishes back into the sea, but it makes a difference for everyone that you do. Ladies and gents, thanks for watching. Linda, Divan, Linda, enjoy your holiday, your break by the dam. I really, really hope you have a phenomenal time. I'm always grateful for you being there. You're really a rock in the program for Pepper's Echo. Email us with any suggestions, questions. If you'd like to come on, tips, tricks. Doesn't have to be political. Can be a nice hobby if you feel like it. motley2020@gmail.com. Sorry, not Motley Mix. I'm on the wrong one. Yeah, Pepper's Echo. Pepper's Echo at gmail.com. PEPRSECHO@gmail.com. Please like and subscribe and share the video. I really, really would appreciate it. It's the only way we can actually get around and get to hear from each other. Let me know if I get enough answers and questions back or suggestions back on what do you think about apartheid post 94 and pre 94. Is it better off now? Was it better off then? Why? Do you see the brutality beforehand, and do you see the brutality now? Murders were higher. I did have a listing and I don't know where it is, so I'm not going to be able to show you right now, unfortunately. But I did have a comparison that showed so many murders then and so many murders now. I can actually show you something there quickly. But I don't like showing this very much, actually, because I'm not trying to say it was right. But I mean, apartheid, 54 years, democracy in 21 years, 14,000 dead blacks, 21 years, 30,000 dead white farmers. Nuclear power in apartheid, 54 years. Coal power in democracy, 21 years. 2 rand to the dollar, and now we are 17 rand to the dollar. Rapes per annum, 372. Rapes per annum, 54,000. Blacks employed, 89%. Blacks employed, 52%. You know what? Make what you want. Make what you want with that. I will log it in the sources below. But yes, don't wish for the past. Appreciate what you've learned from the past. Apply it to the present, and work for it towards the future. And don't forget to be a part of the change for the future. Thank you very much. Take care. Look after yourselves. Be good. And if you can't be good, remember, be kind.